There's a peculiar phenomenon unfolding in South African intellectual circles that truly deserves scrutiny. Professor Piet Kroukamp, a political scientist at the University of Pretoria, has placed himself in an extraordinarily contradictory position that raises very serious questions about intellectual consistency and the ethics of representation. In 2012, Kroukamp didn't mince words about his relationship with Afrikaner identity. He stated unequivocally that he had an aversion to Afrikaner politics and emphasized that the term Afrikaner was ideologically charged. More significantly, he went further, asserting that people who describe themselves as Afrikaners do not feel themselves as part of South Africa. His conclusion was stark. As far as I'm concerned, Afrikaners are virtually, by definition, with rare exceptions, intolerant and probably also racists. His words and not mine. This wasn't a casual observation, ladies and gentlemen. It was a deliberate philosophical distinction between Afrikaners as an ideological identity to be explicitly rejected by him and Afrikaans speaking as a linguistic cultural description he presumably found acceptable. The language he used was absolute, virtually by definition, probably also racists. These are not the words of someone leaving room for ambiguity. Fast forward to 2025 and we find Kroukamp signing the Not in Our Name letter. The opening line reads, "As South Africans and Afrikaners, we write this response." The letter was explicitly signed by Afrikaners who believe in truth, justice, and positioned itself as representing Afrikaner perspectives on Trump's refugee offer. Here's where the logical problem becomes inescapable. How does someone who believes Afrikaners are virtually by definition intolerant and probably racist suddenly claim that identity to speak on behalf of those people? How does someone who rejected the term as ideologically incompatible with South African identity now use it as their credential for moral authority? The hypocrisy cuts deeper than mere inconsistency. This is like Peter Kriel going to the Black Business Summit in China because it's just okay with the fact that a white young man with blonde hair and green eyes is going to go talk in an event that is about black entrepreneurship, right? Because everybody agrees with it, it's got to be right. When Kroukamp signs a letter titled Not in Our Name, he's making a representational claim. He is saying we Afrikaners reject this characterization, but by his own 2012 logic, he's not an Afrikaner. He explicitly distanced himself from that identity, viewing it as fundamentally problematic. This creates a paradox. If Afrikaners are definitionally intolerant, then what authority does someone gain by claiming that identity to oppose Trump's offer despite rejecting it time and time again? Is he saying he's one of the rare exceptions? And if so, what changed between 2012 and 2025? The charitable interpretation might be that his views evolved over 13 years. People do change their minds, I guess, and intellectual growth should be welcomed, no matter the age. But there's no public record of Kroukamp walking back his harsh 2012 characterization. There was no essay titled Why I Was Wrong About Afrikaners. No acknowledgement of the contradiction. This is very, very strategic by the man. Because what makes this particularly problematic is the strategic convenience of the shift. In 2012, distancing himself from Afrikaner identity perhaps positioned Kroukamp as a progressive, post-ethnic intellectual. In 2025, claiming Afrikaner identity gives him standing to reject Trump's narrative about Afrikaner persecution. The identity becomes a tool to be accepted and to be picked up or discarded based on its utility in the moment. This instrumentalization of identity undermines the very principle the letter claims to defend. If being an Afrikaner is merely a label one adopts when convenient for different political argumentation, then the letter's claim to speak authentically as Afrikaners does nothing but rings hollow. Tell me if I'm wrong. Beyond Kroukamp himself, this situation raises very important questions about intellectual honesty and public discourse. When academics and intellectuals take strong public positions, consistency matters. Not because people can't change their minds, but because the public deserves to understand the reasoning behind those changes. If Krugerkamp no longer believes Afrikaners are definitely intolerant and racist, then that's significant. It would suggest either that the Afrikaner community has changed according to him dramatically, or that his initial assessment was wrong. Either conclusion deserves explanation. If he holds those views even now, but signed the letter anyway, that's even more troubling. It would mean he's willing to claim an identity he finds morally problematic for the sake of political positioning and for clout. The Krugerkamp contradiction isn't just about gotcha politics or cheap point scoring. No, it's a fundamental question. Can we trust public officials who adapt identities according to the convenience? Can a letter really claim authority, even though many people may not even accept this identity they are being forcefully given? Since when does Peter Krugerkamp speak on behalf of all Afrikaners? The man rejected them some years ago. Krugerkamp's own words across time. He set the standard with his 2012 statements. The 2025 letter exists in direct contradiction to that standard. The intellectual community and the South African public deserve an explanation for how someone travels from Afrikaners are virtually, by definition, intolerant and probably racist, all the way to signing letters as Afrikaners without addressing that journey. Until that explanation comes, skepticism isn't disrespect. It is the logical response to an unresolved contradiction. And D. Summer-Sambit says this: because Peter Krugerkamp contradicted himself in this very short time span, I must say that action was absolutely stupid. I'll see you next time.